The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
This episode is brought to you by Facebook. So you were scrolling on Marketplace, and there it was, the bike you'd been searching for. You sent a message, and it turned out the seller was super chatty, kind of funny, and an avid cyclist. The next thing you know, you're in a cycling crew. Well, a community cycling group. The thing about Facebook, you might find more than what you're looking for. From a browse to a bike ride, this summer find more on Facebook.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. For 125 years, Nordstrom has been part of your story. The stylist who found the perfect outfit for your big interview. The first pair of walking shoes for your 1-year-old. The tomato soup you shared with your sister at the cafe. These are the moments that make Nordstrom, Nordstrom. Big or small, we're here for all of it. Celebrating 125 years with new moments still ahead. Discover it all in Nordstrom stores and at Nordstrom.com.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, host of the Live Like Eden podcast. What do you do when your whole life flips upside down? Are you questioning everything, lost in chaos, or yearning for life's deeper meaning? I've been there, deep in the thick of it, unraveling my own awakening mess for over 20 years. Now I'm here to help you through yours. I share no-nonsense weekly wake-ups, cutting through the ego's illusions to wake you up to your own spiritual wisdom. No mountaintop bliss needed here, just practical tools, insights, and real-life experience to save you time. Plus, a much-needed laugh when we're all losing it. Let's dive into this fresh new episode. Welcome back to another episode, everybody. I have a question for each one of you listening. Are you happy? Do you consider yourself a happy person? Do you think that you're living a happy life? Has anything ever happened to you to disrupt what you thought was happiness? Well, I thought I was happy many, many years ago. I was living a very happy life, or so I thought. I was recently asked a question that sparked the entire show today. And what she said to me was this. You mentioned that you were a happy person before you had your sudden energetic awakening all those years ago, that you were living a happy life. Do you consider yourself happy now? And how do you see that now? And I thought this was an excellent question. And for those of you that are new to the show or you haven't heard my experience before, I was living a very happy life. I was newly married. I thought everything was amazing. I was just starting a new business. My husband had his own business and everything was great. I didn't have a rough childhood. My parents were loving and I hadn't really had too many challenging moments. You know, it was just things were easy. Things came easily to me until one moment I had a sudden surge of energy come up my spine while teaching a yoga class that went up into my head and literally started an undoing of an identity that I believed myself to be. I had no knowledge of this concept or this process of awakening. It didn't even enter my mind, never in my whole life. So it sent me into a complete whirlwind, right? My life crumbled. And it took me years and years and years to work through it. It sent me into the darkness, isolation, out of society. I couldn't do anything. I had 4 kids. It was a mess. It was a total shit show. Eventually, I figured out how to get myself back into life, working with this profound energy that I was feeling, and learn to live with this radically shifted consciousness that I was now and still experience. What's interesting now about what she asked me is, am I happy now? And this is how I answer this question, and I want you to think about it for yourself, which is why I asked the series of questions in the beginning, was I only thought that I was happy. And I didn't realize that I was so attached to the identity of myself, the identity that I had spent a couple of decades building. We don't realize this, right? We don't realize in life that every moment we are forming an identity about what we're doing, our career, our family, our relationships, our opinions, beliefs, perspectives is shaping our identity in the world. And this identity is how we operate here. It's how we interact. It's how we see each other. It's how we view other people through their identities, through bodies, correct? When you have a moment of crisis, anything in life, it does not have to be a sudden internal surge that I had, but any moment of crisis where you're, walking through your life and everything's going pretty well, right? Maybe you got some bumps in the road, but everything you manage and everything's okay. And you feel what you think is happiness. And then something happens. Something big, some huge, impactful moment hits you out of nowhere. Could be anything. Maybe you just suddenly lost the closest person in your life. Maybe you've had a sudden health scare or an illness that's popped up out of nowhere, and now you don't know what to do. Maybe you've lost a pet. Maybe you've lost a child or a parent or your job, or somebody betrayed you in a way that you never thought possible. There's so many things and so many ways that impact hits us through trauma, a sudden accident, some crazy event that you couldn't even fathom happens and flips your life upside down. These are the moments that start rattling the identity, and we don't even know it. We don't realize how addicted we are to the ego's version of ourself, the small self, the small identification we have with the special self that we believe we are. Or when we have moments or weeks or months, years even, lifetimes, where this crack in our foundation gets larger. It keeps growing. And eventually it's like the crack opens up so large, like a fault line, right? It's just the whole earth separates and now we're falling into the ground, into the abyss or the void. And then what? We're panicking, right? We don't know what to do. So today's show is all about when the ego's version of happy falls apart and how to find the authentic self. And I avoid using the word your authentic self because the ego is very clever at forming a new identity as its own special self. So what I'm referring to when I say the authentic self, I'm really hinting at the spiritual side, this spirit that is there for all of us. It's the same spirit that is the messenger that is here to wake us up. So I'm referring to getting in touch with that. And I want to break the show down into two parts, one being the ego's version of happiness, and then the invitation that awaits all of us. Always. It's always available, and it's the spiritual invitation to truth. It's the invitation that Spirit is offering us, which is peace, which is freedom, and it's eternal. It's not the glimpse of happiness that I was living prior to my whole life falling apart. Isn't it interesting how we can literally be in the world and walking through lifetimes, if you will, if you believe in reincarnation or not, and be so attached to ourselves without even knowing it? Before I had this rumbling in my center, this crack in my own foundation, when this energy blew through my spine up into my head and just continued, and started a huge process of purification. It introduced me and pulled me into this vast field of awareness where I started being able to view myself, like being pulled out of your identity and looking at it through the lens of a larger observer or field of consciousness or awareness, whatever terminology you want to use, but being able to watch yourself. Now, being able to watch yourself implies that maybe you're not that self. Right? Maybe there's something else that is luring me somewhere else. If I'm able to see it, because before all this happened, I was not viewing myself in that way. I was in it, right? And maybe you're in it, right? You're immersed in yourself. You're immersed in your identity that you've created, all the things you love in life, all the things you want to do that you aspire to achieve, all these things we are attached to. It's like we see a ladder and we're climbing and reaching for that expectation and outcome that we feel is going to bring us eternal happiness. But most of the time, what happens when you get to that goal? What happens? You get it, it's satisfying, but then what creeps in eventually? A new goal. Something else creeps in and you want more. This is what we'll get into here in a minute, what the ego loves to do. Before I get into these two parts, I want to ask you a question about your own happiness. Now, I started the show by asking, are you happy? But I want you to think about it a little bit more right now. Are you happy? And what is your definition of happy? Is it that you wake up every morning and you're laughing in joy and exhilarated and feeling ecstasy about starting the day? Is that happiness? Or do you find happiness is more of this state of constant contentment, of internal joy and peace, unwavering, unshakable, if you will? Because these are different things, right? Riding an exhilarating high seems like something to grab a hold of, as opposed to feeling an internal contentment that never ends. But I really want you to think about it for yourself. What do you think is happiness? Do you define happiness in the things that you do externally? Getting something that you want, sharing moments with your family and friends, experiences, experiencing the world, traveling. I was recently dropping my daughter off at school again this year, and I love to travel. I love going and just seeing new places, new environments. And I realize often that we're all just doing the same thing. you know, it's like we're all here in the world trying to figure it out, trying to wake up, trying to see clearly. As you think about moments in your own life, experiences, whether it's travel, whether it's crisis, whether it's a sudden impactful moment of any kind, positive or negative, right? It doesn't have to be a negative, impactful moment. It can be quite positive, but it shifts how you see yourself and the world around you. What are these moments teaching us, right? What are they trying to get us to see? What is happening underneath the surface? And that's what we're going to get into. But before we can see what it's inviting us toward, let's look at the ego's identity and see it clearly. Because the ego has a very strict policy. It's very rigid. And if you ever find yourself feeling rigid or constricted in any way and you're tensing up, just say to yourself, oh, there it is. There's the ego in its masterful way, holding me in. And that's what it's like. It's like keeping you bounded, keeping you inside in a prison, if you will. Sometimes it gets so bad, it feels like it's a prison cell of your own mind. And then it manifests physically, right? The body starts feeling tight and constricted and heavy. So how does the ego view impact, especially if it's negative impact? How does the ego view a sudden crisis in your life? It sees this moment of impact as a problem. I can attest to that. The moment I had a foreign energy blow through my body in such an extreme, forceful way, my mind immediately attached to that moment as a major problem. This is a problem, and it needs what? What does the ego do next? It's going to seek a solution. And 99% of the time, it's going to seek a solution outside in the world. Right? Always. It's got to go on a scavenger hunt looking for the solution to the supposed problem, right? Because it's viewing this moment as a problem. Think for a moment, let's say you had a sudden health crisis and you just suddenly felt horrible. You've been in and out of the doctor. You've had test after test after test. Every doctor gives you their own viewpoint. And maybe you're trying different medications, you're trying to help yourself, you're going to alternative therapists, you're going to everyone you can think of outside, you're going on the hunt to solve the problem. Nothing wrong with doing any of that, but it is the ego's game. It's the ego's view of grasping a hold of an answer. It wants a solution to a supposed problem. And the external world is full of answers, isn't it? There's a pathway to everything. There are literally so many ways to solve problems in the world. It's endless. I mean, it's like a 360-degree view. You could solve a health problem in so many different ways, right? And all the doctors will have different ways of solving that problem or different interpretations of what's actually happening. The naturopath might have a totally different viewpoint. It's going to be holistic and different. And then, a surgeon might say, oh, we got to go do surgery immediately. There's all of these different pathways to solve a problem. But sometimes these problems really don't ever get solved. It's like we just keep grabbing a hold of something until there's another problem. And the body is so good at this. You tackle one problem and then what happens? Another ache and pain pops up 2 weeks from now. Something else happens. And then we're out searching and seeking and doing the whole song and dance over and over and over. And the ego does this primarily to keep what? Control. The ego loves control. It wants total control. And it has this theme underneath that's saying, I'm right and you're wrong. So it holds on to its own identity at all costs. It will constantly project outside of itself to maintain being right, to maintain its stance, to maintain itself. You could say that the ego is the king of the kingdom. We are all attached to the king of our own kingdom, of our own internal universe that we don't really know is happening, right? We don't even know what's going on until that identity starts to fade, until things happen in our life where our identity is now in question. For example, let's say you've built an entire life around a career, and in this career, you're an expert in your field. And in this field, you are famous. People know who you are. You go and speak at events, and all of a sudden, one day, everyone in the field despises everything you have to say. You're no longer invited to any of these events anymore. You're now seen as an outcast, and no one wants to listen to your teachings any longer for whatever reason. It's like a sudden role reversal happens. Or you identified as a parent, right? You're a parent and you're parenting your child and you're giving them all the care and love and nurturing them as much as you possibly can. And one day your child suddenly despises you, just suddenly stops talking to you, never speaks to you again, leaves you completely, doesn't want anything to do with you. This shatters your belief in your role as a parent, right? It's like, who am I now that I'm not a parent, or my child is seeing me as a bad parent? They want nothing to do with me. Things happen every day that make our ego identity question who we truly are. And what does the ego typically want to do? As I just said, it's going to see this as a problem. It's going to seek for a solution. It's going to look in the external world for that solution. It wants to keep control and stay king of the kingdom. It's going to protect its separate special self at all costs. It's going to make sure that all the distractions are still present, that you grab a hold of them. And if one doesn't work, you move on to the next distraction and the next and the next, and you just keep grabbing at straws. But what is going on here? Underneath the surface, there's a shadow going on, right? The shadow is lurking. And what is this shadow, or you could say the subconscious ego self? Like, what's going on here? All this surface level distraction is doing what? It's covering up something that it doesn't want us to see. It doesn't want us to know that there's something we're missing. It's always been there, and we can remember it, but it doesn't want us to know that. So it just keeps putting up all the stops externally. But underneath the shadow is protecting the invitation, this grand invitation to see differently. And this is an invitation by the spiritual self, the Holy Spirit, whatever terms you want to give it. It's the invitation to see the authentic self with a capital S. Not the special identity of yourself or me as Lindsay, but the real self. This broader sense of self, this compassionate, loving sense of self that awaits all of us.
This episode is brought to you by Facebook. So you were scrolling on Marketplace, and there it was, the bike you'd been searching for. You sent a message, and it turned out the seller was super chatty, kind of funny, and an avid cyclist. The next thing you know, you're in a cycling crew. Well, a community cycling group. The thing about Facebook, you might find more than what you're looking for. From a browse to a bike ride, this summer find more on Facebook.
So good, so good, so good.
New fall arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off brands like Vince, Steve Madden, Kate Spade New York, and Boss. Stock up on the latest trends like animal print, lace, and suede. Join the Nordy Club for free to unlock exclusive discounts, shop clearance, and new arrivals before anyone else, and so much more. Plus, you can buy online and then pick up your order at your favorite Rack store. It's fast and free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
And this invitation is seated in the calm, still point. It's a stillness that's always there. You know, I just mentioned that I just dropped my daughter off at school, and I was sitting listening to her, and she's very stressed out, as college kids can be, trying to figure it out, right? Are they going to have enough money? They want to do these things, full-time school and job. And, you know, she was very stressed out. On the surface, it was like the earth was shaking, you know? And imagine for a minute in your own life, if you've been into an argument with someone, or you're presented in a heated situation, or somebody's unhappy, you know, somebody's venting, and you can kind of feel the ground shaking beneath you. It's very unstable, right? I couldn't help but think in my own moment of shaky ground that I could go to the calm, still point and see and feel peace, even underneath the rattling. Even as it's happening. Most of the time we have an argument or we have an uncomfortable moment, and it's very difficult to maintain peace in that moment, right? What's the ego want to do? React, attack, threaten, put up all the stops, all the things I just listed, right? Control the situation. It's very difficult for us to just realize that the invitation is sitting there, even in that moment, even in the earthquake. It's difficult to see that there is a calm, still point that's just sitting there watching, waiting for us to see it, waiting for us to join with it. And this is what I'm getting at today. This invitation for each one of us, that no matter what impactful moments we're having, whether they're large or small, or positive or negative, there's always a space to see that moment in a different way, in a lighter way, in a peaceful way. And I bring up all these points about the ego, not to dwell on the ego and not to glorify it or anything like that, because there's nothing more than the ego loves is when we talk about it constantly. But it's more just to see it clearly. It's more to understand what it's doing so that you realize you have an opportunity to choose again, that you have an opportunity to see spirit and choose a wiser teacher, just as A Course in Miracles is always telling us. It's always saying there's always another way to see. There's always another way. And each moment, no matter what it looks like on the outside, we can choose again. And that's liberating, right? That's wonderful to know. We don't have to beat ourselves up every time we have a bad situation or we think we're never going to get out of that crisis. We know that every moment is an opportunity. And that should make everybody listening feel lighter and pull you up out of the darkness a little bit, that there is always that opportunity, that the ego will do everything in its power to keep us attached to ourselves. But we can rise above that battleground in the mind and choose to see beyond the body, to see beyond separation, to see beyond our own specialness. It's always there. Going back to the original question that this woman had asked me was, are you happy now? You know, you said you were living a happy life. The answer that I'll give you now is that I thought I was living a happy life until everything crumbled. I didn't realize that I was so into myself. I had no idea. I didn't know that I had built this huge foundation around a personal self and that everything in the world that I was doing was reflecting back on that personal self that I believed that I was. And it's only when that starts to crumble or fade or dissolve, if you will, that you start realizing that maybe that's not what I was at all. I bring this up because it's so common. When our personal identity starts to fade, the ego steps in and tries to rebuild a new identity. It wants to recreate itself. And this happens to all of us, right? We start attaching to new parts of ourselves, forming a new foundation. When that happens, it's important to recognize when it's happening. Oh, I'm doing this again. I'm getting attached to this new sense of self. And it's not that you can't build a new life. It's not that you can't build new pathways for yourself or new ways of doing things or experiencing things or new relationships or anything like that. Do all those things, right? We try to live as normally as we can in the world, but seeing what's going on is all that matters. I see that I'm attaching to this new way, but I realize that I'm not. I realize the invitation is still there to spirit. So what is happiness then with spirit? Because now I really do feel happiness, but I feel it in a very different way. And I think the biggest difference between the ego's version of happiness and spirit's is that spirit's happiness will never waver, no matter what happens to you on the outside or the inside for that matter. Because in my experience, nothing was really happening on the outside. My life was going along as normal, but the inside, that special self was crumbling inside. So whether it's this external belief of who you are or the internal foundation, spiritual happiness is true happiness. It's always there. It doesn't matter if you're going through a horrific period or a happy period of your life. It's always peaceful underneath. Now, the ego's version of happiness is what? It's only happy when it gets what it wants, It only sets expectations and it wants a certain outcome all the time. And that equals happiness. Whether that outcome is it wants to feel miserable or it wants to feel amazing, it's the same thing. It's still seeking outside or projecting outside for happiness. So how do you know, right, in your own life, if you are truly happy? Well, ask yourself if you've been through difficulty in the past or you're going through it now. Is your happiness wavering? Are you starting to feel unsettled and uncertain and worried and anxious? Here's some different points to think about to know if it's spirit's happiness or your ego. Is that spirit will rise above the battle in your mind all the time. Spirit's not going to get attached to what your mind is thinking. It's always offering you that elevator ride up above the conflict that you're dealing with to see clearly. So it's coming from a place of non-judgment. It's like a 30,000-foot view above and looking down on what's happening. And I don't mean literally, but you get what I'm saying. Like you're rising out of your conflict and seeing all angles of it. You're not becoming the battle. Those are very different things. Watching the battle and becoming the reactionary battle are very, very different. Spirit's happiness or spirit is always watching with that awareness. There's no need to take the bait of life's mess. That hook that's always waiting there. The ego's got the hook. There's no need to do that. Spirit doesn't even see the bait. It doesn't see it at all. It doesn't see a problem. Just as I was saying earlier, how the ego always views everything impactful and crisis moments or identity crisis as a problem, spirit does not see it that way. Spirit's seeing it as this is your opening to see and choose differently. It's your opening into your authentic self with a capital S. Spirit's always showing you that peace is available, that there is the calm, still point there, even in the midst of chaos. I mean, literal chaos. And even during horrible things in the world that seem to be ongoing throughout history and now and in the future, you can still view it from a place of non-judgment. You can extend peace and feel that unwavering place, this extensive self just going in all directions. It is available. I want you to think about something for a minute. As we talk about the ego's version of happiness and then spirit's view of happiness, it appears as if there's two minds, right? Two ways of seeing. But what if there is really only one mind? And what if this one mind is something that we all share? And within this mind, we can either choose the ego's view or the spirit's way out. But it's still just one mind. It's almost like imagine if there was this one mind that just flipped one way or the other, but it was still encompassed in one. If there's really only one mind, then we're all sharing that mind, right? We all share this ability to choose the ego and the special identity and staying rooted in the special self. And we also share Spirit's invitation and that answer to real happiness, the contentment that just stays no matter what happens on the surface of life. There's a couple of questions that come to my mind, and I want you to think about these as I wind down the show here. I want you to ask yourself, If I lost the most important things in my life tomorrow, for example, if you lost all your money, it was just suddenly gone. You lost your home. Maybe you lost your most intimate relationship. You lost your pets. Or what if you lost your parents or your children tomorrow? Or you lost your job or your lifelong career, or even your health, like I talked about earlier. If you lost these most important things in your life, ask yourself, would you still be happy? It's hard to know what we would do in these moments, isn't it? Just as I would have never fathomed how I would have reacted to my own undoing. I had no idea that was coming. That's why moments of impact are so difficult, right? We don't see them coming. We get blindsided. They're unexpected. And we go into an internal panic, which is the ego's favorite thing to do. But maybe these moments that happen in our lives, like the ones I'm suggesting above for you to ask yourself if you lost them all tomorrow, these moments, these earthquakes that kind of rattle our lives, maybe they're not what we think they are. Maybe it's all a ruse. Maybe it's just designed to wake us up. Maybe all these impactful moments are just invitations. Maybe it's an invitation out of this separate self that we think we are. This shadow, right? The shadow beneath the surface that really is just creating a solid barrier to the truth. Maybe these impactful moments are the beginning of permanence, like a real permanence we long for, but have only forgotten. A permanence that's stable, certain, loving, honest, non-judgmental, and ever-present. And finally, maybe these moments that shake us to our core, these moments of crisis where we think the world is ending tomorrow, maybe all of these moments are not doomsday. It's not the end of our life. Maybe it's just the beginning of lasting spiritual freedom. I hope this show makes you think about what happiness means. And sometimes we get challenged, don't we? We don't see what's coming. We can't know the future. None of us read minds. But where are you in your relationship to happiness? Are you rooted in the ego's version of happiness and thinking it's outside of yourself? Or are you beginning to see through the veil that there's an invitation to spirit, that there is a solid space of contentment underneath it all, that there is a way to stay rooted in peace and happiness and internal joy, even when the worst possible things happen to us? And just like I thought I was happy prior to the moment of impact in my life when my whole world fell apart, maybe the moments where you're panicked and uncertain of what's coming next are really leading you to true happiness, a happiness with the authentic self. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me on my website at livelikeeden.com or send me a message on Instagram at live.like.eden. I love hearing from you and happy to help in any way that I can. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you all next time. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. If it resonated, please share, follow, and drop a review with your takeaways. It really means a lot. Visit my website at livelikeeden.com to subscribe for weekly reminders and blogs, or sign up for a free 30-minute consult to explore one-on-one guidance sessions if you're really struggling in awakening's darkness. Take my awakening quiz to get a personal podcast playlist that meets you exactly where you're at. See you next week for another deep dive.
I'm Suzanne Giesman, and if you've ever wondered about life after death, or if it's possible to connect with higher consciousness, I invite you to join me for my podcast, Always Connected. It's my mission to share with you that a connection with loved ones who have passed and divine guidance is always available, and we are so very loved. I want to teach you how to live a consciously connected and divinely guided life. Listen here on the mindbodyspirit.fm podcast network.
NFL football season is here, which means when you switch to Verizon, it feels like...
Touchdown!
Because you get NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube on us when you buy an eligible 5G phone on select unlimited plans, which means you can watch every out-of-market game every Sunday afternoon. And it's all on us. Now that's the Verizon way to kick off the NFL football season right. Switch and get NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube on us, only with Verizon.